non-commercial event. To assist with documentation, we are using AI transcription services to create minutes of this meeting. And please feel free to reach out to if you have any questions and concerns. And thank you for participation and cooperation. So participants, we now start this ice break session. So participants can open your camera and say hello in your language. Can we have say hello in language, your own language?
Yes, Ayubowan, that is in Sri Lanka.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Yes, Mr. Isuri. Can you hear me?
Ayubowan.
Hope you are very fine.
So participants from
Uganda.
Asia, camera on.
Uganda.
Say hi. Participants from Asia. Where are the
Yes,
participants
Mr.
from Asia? Where are these people from Asia?
Yeah,
How are you?
they're from Asia.
Okay. So participants from Africa. Say, come on, say Africa.
Hello, Africa.
So participants from any other parts of the world. If we have few more, I think we have few more partners from other continent. This is their time. If we have those participants, you can say hi. All of us now. We all can put our camera on and say resilience. Come on. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Resilience.
Resilience.
Yeah, resilience.
Resilience.
So
Great.
now. So yeah. Before we start our proceedings, these are our core values. So respect, value everyone's voice and opinions. Inclusivity, ensure all participants feel comfortable to share. Clarity, communicate clearly and concisely. Collaboration, work together towards shared understanding and goals. So ground rules, please keep your microphones muted unless you are speaking. Raise your hand if you would like to contribute or ask a question. Give everyone a chance to speak by keeping your questions and statement brief. Use airtime wisely to ensure that all voices are heard. So question you can ask at the question time. And yeah, up to now, it's up to Kiri to continue this presentation. Kiri?
Kiri, are you there? Kiri, it's your
Can you
turn
hear
to
me?
slides. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So tonight we are in the second session, and as we know that we have many partners around us. If you see the logos there, more to be added because from time to time partners are coming, and from the 74 applications entered, around 35 are accepted, and we are still looking for others who are interested to join. We are still welcome, and register yourself. Yeah, Bagi teman-teman, silakan untuk register ya untuk daftar for the Indonesia. And for now, next please.
Mr. Next slide, please.
Yeah. It has been good for us that we arrive in the second session. So we have passed our call application, participant selection, and now today we are in the second session of Photo Voice, where we will have virtual training until December. And we are looking for others to join as we go through the Photo Voice journey. And hopefully in the coming week, we can start providing some pictures for us to learn. And we encourage also for our friends from different countries, maybe we can prepare for in-country events as a way to celebrate together the final launch of this global event of Tsunami 20 Plus, Next Gen Photo Wall of Resilience. And for us to to be a friendly reminder for us, yeah, please add photo and narrative for our discussion. If you have done, it's good. But if you haven't done any or haven't sent any photo with narratives, we encourage you to send us photos and narratives. And using this Google Doc link is provided. Maybe we can copy later on also in the chat box. And before we go to the session tonight, I will give back to Isuru for the introduction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I have the real honor of welcoming our speaker, Pramidith Rupasinghe. So Pramidith is a really busy professional, and thank you so much for giving us your time, which is very valuable. Uh, and may I read a little bit about himself to inspire the youth who are here and the young people who are here. So he is a laureate of the Golden Astor Prize for World Literature in the
Jadi
20.
yang pembicara kita malam ini.
Wait, please hold it.
Oh.
Please hold. I have to start the Indonesian one. Kiri. Yeah, okay. Now, if there are any participants who want in Bahasa Indonesia, you can go into the interpretation. Okay. Right. So let me start. Laureate of Golden Astor Prize for World Literature in 2020 for his work Bayan, Pramidith Rupasinghe is a novelist from Sri Lanka. He is known for his work, which represents the cultures around the world. His literature works predominantly unfold in settings beyond his native Sri Lanka and have been translated into several languages, including Sinhalese, Burmese, Polish, German, Ukrainian, Russian, and French. Rupasinghe's work Bayan, set in Ukraine, won the Golden Astor Prize for Global Literature in 2020 and was long listed for the 2023 Paris Book Festival. Bayan has been featured in several European campaigns in support of Ukraine. Another notable work by Rupasinghe, Behind the Eclipse, unfolds in the West Africa during the Ebola crisis. So That would be great news for all our participants from Africa here. His forthcoming book, She Who Snatched the Moon, set in Bangladesh, is slated for publication in 2025. Rupasinghe divides his time between Colombo and Brussels and has dedicated 2 decades to humanitarian work, drawing inspiration for his writing from his missions to Africa, Europe, Southeast Asia, and Middle East. So without much ado and with so much gratitude, may I invite Pramudit to talk to us about this very interesting topic, power of storytelling for humanitarian causes. What better person to discuss that topic? Over to you, Pramudit. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noel. And good afternoon, good evening, and good morning in case if somebody is joining from the other end of the world. Does everyone hear me well?
I
I
do
think,
hear
yeah.
you.
Yeah, very well with you.
Great. Okay, so today I'm here to not formally talk about the power of storytelling, but rather trying to open kind of informal flow of information that are processed in a form of a story, starting from my humanitarian career until the point where I become a novelist. And I will discuss, or rather, I will tell you what made me take that route that was least taken and why I decided to remain as a novelist. Okay, so it's very good to be in this form for, like the forum, because we are also talking about some aspects, or we are rather, we have gathered because of one cause. It is a 2004 tsunami. Let me start from that point. My humanitarian career started in 2004 with the South Asian or Indian Ocean tsunami. I started with Indonesia. I was deployed with American Red Cross to Banda Aceh. And then I moved in the region and ended up in Sri Lanka in 2005. That was the beginning of a journey that took me a cycle of 20 years of, a cycle of 20 years across the world. I would call it a cosmic journey because at that time, I didn't know that was going to end one day and where it would end. After Sri Lanka, I briefly went to other countries like Indonesia, India, etc., and served there, and then moved to Pakistan with Pakistan earthquake, etc. And then another continent was waiting for me. That was Africa, where I went in 2009 and served the continent for over 7 years. That was a journey that opened my eyes wide enough to see the world's darker corners in a different way. Darker corners, I mean, not in Africa. Darker corners means the things that I have not, and things that others even have not explored or didn't have time to explore. The way we work, has been pretty much flat. And the way we think has been pretty much flat. And when I started working in Liberia, it was 2013, as the deputy head of Ebola crisis response, I realized there is something wrong. I realized that the language that we speak as humanitarians needs to be adjusted, needs to be altered, needs to match with the people whom we work. I don't call them beneficiaries because there's a power gap if you use that word. That was in my mind. In 2014, I decided to take a pen and write down, thinking that if I were a person from this field or from a village, how I want you to come to me and talk to me. I just wanted to hear that within my mind. That was the pinnacle of the Ebola crisis. Everybody was busy responding to the epidemic. But still, it was not stopping. And there were best public health experts from all over the world. There were best doctors, best epidemiologists, best everyone with us. But the situation was soaring day by day. It was March 2016. I looked at what I have written. And it was a book. If I was a person from one of those villages, I would like to read. I'm trying to shed the light on the kind of understanding that we need to know to make a story powerful. So I picked this piece of work behind the eclipse. I don't know whether it is clear.
Pramudit, if you could kindly remove your yeah, now it's clear. If you hold it in front of you,
Okay.
yeah,
This
that's
is okay. This is my first work of fiction. I'm going to go to this before my first book because there's a significance in this. So this book was about an Ebola survivor, but it is not the most important case. The most important thing is what really drove me to write this and how I wrote this. So the main issue of such epidemics like Ebola, it's not that we have doctors, we have expertise, Y expertise, and C expertise, but it is the community that takes the lead in controlling them. That means we need to talk to people and we need to support changing behaviors. That is the only way that we manage most the epidemics and most of the public health issues, most of the DRR issues that we are facing today. Behavior is key. To change the behavior, it is very vital for us to understand how to talk to people in the language they speak, in the tonality they find okay, in an intonation they find stomachable or digestible. And going further, in traditions, we need in kind of traditions, we hear some distractions. In traditions, the people or the villagers can understand better. That's where the storytelling comes. Why storytelling is so important? We have reports, we have so many documentaries, we have this and that. But if you look at storytelling, I would say that's a tradition that has retained or survived, lived, or else outlived most of the modern ways of communication. And that has retained for generations and survived civil wars, survived epidemics, pandemics, survived migrations, mass migrations, exodus, and still they do live with us, or it does live with us, the storytelling. Because with stories, it's very easy to connect with people. If you, if you use a right story, right way of right language, right presentation, it is very easy to connect with people. And storytelling is something that we've been growing up with, that is in our genes. We quickly, tend to connect with it. And they are in our cultures. Every single culture existing on this earth has stories to tell and has been founded on stories. And the stories do have a part, a significant part or stake in all these cultures. And on the top of that, stories do have an impact on our memory because they themselves are dominating what is here. We have stories in our head. And then stories take us back in the memory lane too. Every historical thing is told through a story, right? And then the nostalgia. We talk about things through stories, the things that bygone past are through the stories. And then the most important thing, listen this, I will repeat this. We have information today. We have so many information. We have so many ways to get the information, the sources, but they can easily overwhelm us. Whereas the stories don't. Because the fact that the human needs to slow down to digest or the stomach this information, to process them and to understand them, throwing the information at them doesn't work. And we have realized that after this revolutionary or whatever we call the information age or age of information. And we now find the luxury in slowing down where the stories can be best invested. Besides that, there are many more things. Have you ever felt this sensation when you take a book and read? You feel that you are isolated in a bubble, and then you enjoy that in the fresh air environment and the disconnection, etc. And that helps you to process better the ideas and understand better and think better, reflect better and come out afresh. And finally, that gives you the time to slow down and realize. So this is where I would like to talk now. When you go on through this whole array or the ladder of things that I presented just now, let's see how storytelling is important. And this type of story impact is how it is important for public health or DRR, the thematic areas, as social behaviors change communication tools. I think you all have heard about a thing called social ecology, where the individual and all the surrounding layers, we need to do the communication to change a specific behavior in an individual. Because you cannot isolate a person to and tell him or tell her something to change a behavior manifested in that person, because there are societal at the family level, peer level, and also communal level, societal level, structural level, and so many other levels that influence the behaviors of people. And people's just the individuals are just like mirrors. They manifest the things that they have been thrown at. So whatever the social behavioral communication tools that we employ or we deploy, or as whatever the efforts we take to assist the behavior change in communities towards public health goals, towards disaster risk reduction goals, towards any other thing, food security livelihood, which also can be considered part and parcel of DRR, and any other behavior, business communication, for say, which is completely different. You need to look at how people stomach information through the cultures and how they understand them and how those information can influence the attitude and then lead to practice. For that, one little thing is very paramount. When you watch a documentary, you have 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. When you talk to a speaker, you have 30 minutes or 1 hour. When you have a telephone call, probably you will, 15 minutes you'll have. But if you read a book or read a story, you have that whole time to think and reflect and process the information and think over and over again. That actually support the KPR, knowledge, attitude, practice, and ritualization. Because you have the knowledge, you can use it over and over again. It is presented in a digestible way, culturally appropriate way. And it also has traits that, it is slow processing information, and that really enhance the attitudinal change. And over time, as you have the time to reflect, you also, that means you have the time to think. And then also you have the whole simplified information presented in a story format, which is not, imposing. You can decide on whatever you do with it, but still, it is something that captures your emotions. So,
We are not getting you, sir.
Please unmute yourself, Pramudit. Yeah. somebody was talking. I was trying to mute that person, but you got muted. I'm sorry.
So I was so where were I when I was when I got muted?
Wait, give me 1 second. I have you.
Okay.
You were telling about KPR, and then
Okay.
because and then you went into, and over time, as you have time, uh you reflect also. That means you have time
Okay.
to think.
Great. Great.
That's where you stop.
Okay. So then, so what happens? The stories are the best tool to translate the facts or the information into emotions. That is very important in social behavioral change communication strategies. So, this book, Behind the Eclipse, has been translated into several languages. We did an anti-stigma campaign for Ebola with this book in 2016. And then before that, I wrote this Footprints in Obscurity. I'll talk about Africa a little later. And that has several editions, hardcover, etc. So these two books actually are set in Africa because all of these participants from African continent, I have to really, for all of you, I have to give you, I mean, kind of kudos and thank you, big thank you for opening my eyes. That was the continent where I realized that whoever who comes in need to be more aware of using indigenous knowledge, indigenous storytelling uh, uh, to towards this community and social mobilization for health and DRR issues. And then, as a result, I chose that the power of, I mean, I just realized the power of storytelling. It is immense and amazing that we often underestimated it. We often got caught in the modern ways, thinking that those ways could be easier to use, easier to deploy. But the reality is very different. Reality is that our humanness, our cultures, the nature, our speed, and everything still detect us. And the culture is something very strong that without it, it's sometimes impossible even to tackle the things that we realize that are needed to change, but we cannot because we fail to recognize the power of those things around us, the power of our identity, power of the things that we've been doing for decades, including stories. And my story as an author, I still today, I believe, even in Europe, it is the same. My next book, Bayan, it was set in 2018 in Ukraine. That was written before the war. Back then, it was a partially historical, partially speculative fiction, which won, as Dr. Noville said, global as the Golden as the Award for Global Literature 2020. But now, unfortunately, it's a historical fiction. So what is the historical fiction? Talking to people, talking to the people in the villages, listening to them, hearing their stories. I felt the seismicity under the under my feet, in the earth, under the crust of the earth, inside the crust of the earth. And that became a truth in 2022 with the Russian invasion. People in the communities sense things better than the strangers. Their stories matter the most. The way they tell things may not be direct, but they direct us, or they show us some directions. Like the winds in paddy field or rice fields, the ripples show where the wing heads, even though we cannot see the wing itself. And no matter where you live, you can be from Africa, you can be from Asia, you can be from Pacific, you can from Europe, Americas. We all humans. We all are humans. We have grown up hearing stories. We will keep on hearing stories because a story in a melodious form, or a story from a mouth of a loved one, first send us to sleep. Sent us to sleep when we were children. And we do the same, we practice the same tradition over and over again. Art, the creative writing, storytelling, poetry, all forms of art do better express and are better understood by humans, because we are products of art and creativity. We are a creation, some say. Then why not? The creation or creativity is the best way that we understand the things. The most complex level of creation is creation itself, huh? Nothing else. So to process information and create new things is the most complex thing that a human can do. But it is the least complex thing to understand by a human. And having that being said, I would like to say the power stories transform. Maybe you may think that it transformed only a few people, but it's not true. It not only transforms the surrounding, but it transforms you as well. Today, I'm not the same person who picked the pen in 2016. I have been on a journey of self-transformation for almost a decade. Much more than the universities I've been, the people and their stories have transformed me. And I have chosen to tell the stories back to them, to transform them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So let's open the floor for discussion. I don't want to say anything because everything is being said. Thank you so much, Pramudit. But let's open the floor for discussion. Please, let's be very open, and if the format would be very different, we don't have any breakout activities today. We will just in this room and have a very open and relaxed conversation with Pramudit. So floor is open for you, all of you. Please put your hand up so that we could moderate the discussion well. Let me ask a question from you to start, Pramudit. Now, the aim of this whole project is to get young people engaged in storytelling about disaster risk reduction. And we know most of us, have started our journeys in life as well as in storytelling, uh, from the tsunami. So now, how do you think that we can use this storytelling for social cause, though that is not maybe the primary aim of author. We want to tell a story, but how can young people use that approach to uh, in this particular program, that I'm asking from a very pragmatic point of view?
Thank you, Dr. Noel. Actually, the storytelling, most of the time, uh, every story has I mean, it's not something that should necessarily be there, but the nature of stories that we hear from everywhere, there is some sort of a message. It can, I mean, the weight of that message can vary from, I mean, it can vary, but still there is something in every story. And the same way that we use stories for the public health, the same way that we stories from other sub-thematic areas, but we can use the stories for other areas that we have not touched. But when it comes to social issues, it's like, I think that the first point of contact is always social, because we tell stories to people and the stories themselves are about people, because most of the stories, even if you tell story using magical realism or surrealism or what kind of a very highly literary approaches, but even an angel addresses something which is human right in the society. And I think I mean, it's already there in every story. And every story addresses a social cause. But, but the thing is that sometimes even the author doesn't know he really addresses that. It can happen because sometimes, like when I write a story, my integrity of the story is about a story that I would like to read. Okay, so a story that Pramidith Rupasinghe would love to read should come from the society where I live, a issue that I would like to talk about, a thing that I would like somebody to talk loud about. And that's how that we unconsciously sometimes write stories. But most our stories and almost everything, I would say, are addressing social issues. But then when it comes to targeted story writing or targeted storytelling, yes, you can target it, then you have more focus on them. But every single story do have that trait, that chemistry, because they are from society and they are going back to the societies. Stories are from people and going back to the people. I think I responded, answered your question.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. That really makes sense. Like, if you look what's happening around the world, when you switch on the news, we see some numbers of people killed or displaced, but we really don't hear the story. So what you've mentioned is very powerful. And I see the hand of Pesh up. Pesh, you want to ask question? Please go ahead. And after you, we can go into the other questions as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Noble, for the opportunity, and thank you, our presenter, for the nice insight. Like my name is Paige. I'm from Africa. Like what I would like to know. Okay, like I live in a camp in a refugee settlement, and in the camp, the youth sometimes they don't have that confidence to tell their story. Okay, like most of those who came from war zone, so sometimes it is really very hard for them to use their stories to gain that momentum. But in that scenario, and we as the local who stay with them, they don't mostly believe in us. So in that case, like whatever we try to share with them, they cannot believe. They believe they don't believe totally. So in that scenario, how do we ensure that the youth can be engaged in order for them to use their story to gain that momentum and change their society?
Thank you, Pesh. So are you from Sudan? Or
Yes, I'm from Sudan, South Sudan. Then I
okay,
live in Uganda.
Uganda. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty familiar with the context. I've been also working briefly in both areas. Uh, so basically, we actually used in South Sudan one time. You may have heard about Internews. There's an organization who do storytelling, and they are pretty much about how to engage the youth for social mobilization. The one of the most success stories of Internews come from there. So uh, actually, you have a lot of folklore, immense number of folklore in most of the countries across. If you draw a line from Chad to Congo, you have, everywhere you have strong folklore. So what I'm suggesting is like, stories can be conventional, stories can be unconventional. And if you want to use the youth, but the youth stories may not be the stories appealing to youth may not be the ones sometimes that coming from, antiquity, old age. But still, the creativity, for me, mostly the creativity is the main thing. If you don't, if you have people who are at least open to engage in little steps, you have to start from there. I think, what Internews did in your place was using a radio station in the camps where people could come and tell stories. But the problem is like if it is a restricted environment where you are watched at the gunpoint, and that's a different story, you know. But just a question for you: is that about the motivation, or is that about the restrictions in the camps you are talking about? whether people are, I mean, I just wanted to know whether people are willing to engage or people are not willing to engage or they are unable to engage.
Okay, now like they are not willing to engage. They have the stories, mostly not from them, but maybe what has been happening. Then okay, then they don't want to engage because when you try to give them the tips as you, the local, they will not believe in you. So in that scenario, how do we change that narrative? That they become storytellers because I believe storytelling is powerful. Yeah.
Okay. Start with something like this. Let me go back to that CAP. So KAPR. So you may know about CAP, knowledge, attitude, and practice and ritualization. So, okay. In Africa, sometimes we go with the CAP indicators. That means, okay, we transfer knowledge, we change attitudes, we let them practice. But look at your community. They practice, they gain their knowledge, and their attitudes change. So the way the people think sometimes change from one place to the other. It's not the stories in which the people are not interested in or they are not willing to, but it's the approach. Probably you have to approach in the reverse way. CAP can be very different. A person could or community could gain knowledge, change attitudes and practice. Sometimes attitude change and knowledge acquisition can be pretty much the same, and then the practice happens. Sometimes they practice and then they lead to understand. They understand what is really behind this, and then the attitude changes can happen. So I think it's about approach, especially.
Okay.
Did I respond to your question at least?
Thank you. And then in the chat, I think Ranga has a question. Ranga, I read that, but if you want to elaborate, please go ahead. Ranga has asked, I have a question. How to make an interesting storytelling? Maybe he wants to know how to make a story interesting. And then again, Moro John Alex asked the question, take us through some tips of good storytelling. Maybe we'll go to those. And then I see a comment by Francis, and then Aloro has raised his hand. But after these two questions, we'll give the floor to Aloro. And then before that, over to you, Pramidith.
Thank you. I will take one by one. So the first one is novel about take us tips of good story. Okay. A good story. A good story can be very different from place to place. First, you have to understand the culture of telling a story. I will give you two examples. When it comes to international writing, we are encouraged to show more than telling. So we use a lot of techniques to show the things, depicts the things rather than telling a story. But when I go back to my country, most of the stories written are just the stories told. We use a lot of telling. So, and those are the main two schools, like, the blocks. But in a story, I believe you have to give as the main area, you have to give something that the reader could visualize. That means showing. You have to, that is very important. Otherwise, people will not just, read something which is, like, okay, kind of a paragraph that has no, nothing to visualize. Definitely, showing is a vital part of storytelling. Number one. And then when it comes to stories, don't think that making a story complex with so many metaphors, so many jargons, so many technical things, or very difficult words to just show your competence in language doesn't matter. It doesn't work actually, because the story should be said in the most, like I would say, the simplest way, simple language, but that need to touch the emotions of the reader as well as characters. And the characters need to be real, which means even though you write about an angel, but it should, or she should have something to share with the humans. A human story is often told by those supernatural or the magical realism, etc., etc. So, and at the same time, it's very important to understand that your characters are full, because the reader should feel that these are relatable. A story should always be relatable. And then you can tell stories from other cultures, you can tell stories that are completely from different settings, yes, but need to be sensible. There can be very dark stories, but they can be presented or written in a way that people don't get traumatized. A story is not about making somebody cry. It's not, a story is not about making somebody, like scared out of, scared the hell out of somebody. No. A story is something that is just to convey a message in the most artistic way that it is healthy. Make the story healthy. It is very important. For that, you have to understand the person who is in front of that. I mean, the person who is going to read that. Be sensitive to that person. You have to be all the time conscious about those things. Don't think about the complex languages. Keep it simple. Understand the person who's gonna read it. Be empathetic. It's very simple things. And use the techniques to show rather than telling, because otherwise it will be your story, not the person's story. And finally, allow a space for the reader to imagine. Don't overtake his or her imagination and make it your world. Allow the space for that person's world and allow your story to inhabit his place or her place. Don't go and try to inhabit his space or her space with your story. And the second one, I think interesting is storytelling, and the tips I presented together, I think.
Yes, yes, you did. And then maybe we will give the floor to Goy Joseph now, and then we'll come to this comment. Maybe Francis can explain to us that later, but over to you, Goy Joseph. Thanks a lot for waiting for the question, for your
I think
turn.
Aloro Joseph, Aloro
Yes.
Buddhist.
Hello.
Yes.
Maybe can someone confirm maybe if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Joseph from Africa, basically Uganda. I joined a little bit late, though actually I was able to catch up. My question is about the methodologies that can be used, especially to capture those stories. So, like for us, basically, we do also storytelling. However, the storytelling, the methodology that we use is the video. We do documentaries whereby we record someone's story, which we later on use it for advocacy. So basically, these questions goes for the tsunami initiative, like the methodology. Is it going to be written kind of things? So that's a kind of guidance that I may want, because I joined a little bit late because of the network issues. Thank you.
Joseph, uh, thank you for your question. I think in that I will shed the light on one part partially because of the video part, because video making and the video stories are not my area of expertise. But for a video story, there should be a story written to, do the casting and everything else. So that story, when you do write a story, there are three methodologies. There are principally three methodologies. For example, like, when you are a beginner in terms of writing, I mean, I'm talking about full length writing, like going to 500, 600, 700 pages. So it's a big story. But for a video, you don't need that. But still, I will tell you about complete story writing, three methodologies in a very short time. First one is called plotting. You need to have a plot. You have the plot, the sketch, a fishbone, and then you put the flesh. The second thing is completely writing a story random. You don't have a plot, you have something in your head, and then you build up that thing. There are people who do that. So there shows the very short plots we do that way. But then again, you refine it. But then there's a third one. I do mostly that way. The people who write it, like pitch it in the middle. That means you have a plot, you have a sketch, but then you put the flesh into that. But it is not a strong and rigid sketch like a sketch of a plotter. It's not as flexible or as liquid as somebody who just write a small story out of blue. So there are three ways to write. But what I would recommend, don't be very rigid when you write a plot. Plot can always change. None of my stories didn't end the way I wanted, the way I planned. They always changed. Even the characters change, even the end changed. Even some stories, even the middle part changed heavily. I think leave you the space. This is not, this is not something going to be written on a rock. Respect the humanness in you. Leave that flexibility. I think that's the best way to write a story. So that as I told you, this is a partial response because I'm not an expert in video, but I talk about the plot or the story that is, that is the base for a story that translate into a video. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope Joseph Goy, they have answered you. Then, yeah, the next
Yes.
question is, okay. Yeah, if they have not answered you, please you can also put in a text in the chat box, then for us also to follow. We have also Aloro Gordon. Please, yeah, you can talk.
So, okay, thank you, my dear friends. You're speaking to Aloro Gordon Paul from Rhino Camp Refugee Settlement in Uganda. So I'm very excited hearing the storytelling part of it. We are based in storytelling and the story writing. Mostly, before you have your story, you need to first have the idea, like he said. When having the idea, what are you going to solve? The story is going to talk about what? After that, you'll have the characters of the people. And after getting the characters, then you need to have the content of that story. Then my challenge is now here for us who always record audio drama. For me, I've not tried writing a book or a story, a full story, but we're still trying to write a story. I wanted to learn something because a story, you need to have a content about that story, and in the content, you need to have the necessary things in the content to be part. How can we, like the stories we have, and we want to change it to a written story? How do we really make it like the recorded audio and the video stories? Is it possible for us to change those contents to audio to written stories? Because in the settlements, there are so many stories that we have done, but we have not seen impact. And people are saying the youth are not ready to come for the stories writing. Or if you want to interview somebody to know about the story, yes, it is obvious because we the youth we need, they are motivated, and when we add those story writing in an activity, or you say you have training for this storytelling for 1 month, 6 months, 3 months, you see somebody who's interested in writing books will be part of the training, and that is how stories will be evolved. For me, I wanted to inquire, how can we really make this work for us? Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's one of very interesting questions. So let me take you on a short journey about this thing. It's very interesting, by the way. So imagine you want to write a story. Forget about everything that you said, like no, the audio stories and everything else. You want to write a story based on some interviews. What is the first step you do? You listen to some interviewees. So they tell a story that you hear. It's an auditory source, like an audio story. That can be incomplete, that can be short, that can be things that you need to make up, that there can be things that you need to make up, etc. If you want to translate it into a written story. Always, if you convert one form of a story to another, for example, a novel into a film into a written book, or a teledrama into a book, or an audio script into a book, they all need different changes. Sometimes they demand bigger changes. So if you take an audio content and write a story, it is okay to fictionalize certain parts in a way that it doesn't take the relevance and the relatability of the story away. That needs to be set in the culture, that needs to be set in the context, that needs to be focused on the main idea of, if you want, and that's how you do it. So for that, yes, as you said, you need to pick the characters, you need to flesh it with the stories, other elements, and etc. But There's no way called right way. Some writers pick the characters first, put them in. I mean, my case is like I always pick the characters when I have the plot. Then I think of the other things. First, I write the characters and I try to understand them. Wait, like, spend some time with those imaginary characters and try to understand how, if I put Oloro with Dr. Noville, what would be the first conversation? And then if Pechi comes there out of sudden, what will be their reactions? If he doesn't excuse or come in, and how Dr. Noville will respond. All of these things, your mind game. You have to have it inside you. And then the other way around, you can have your story and then you can feed characters, right? So this is, it depends on one person to the one writer to the other, but still you can start from the one end, or you can choose the other end. But as long as you are comfortable, that should be the way. You can start with the storyline that you pick from the radio or the audio story. And then you can also add more and more characteristics to the characters to have the perfect chemistry between the characters. And then put some fictional elements that are still relevant and relatable to make it a bigger written story. Or else you can have your complete story in your imagination or on a paper, and then you plug the characters from here and there and try to create the right interaction. So, as I say, remain as water, flexible, with that kinetic energy. Okay.
So much. I would really appreciate if those who are listening could keep your mic silent uh, unless you're asking a question. Um, I just want to invite probably. I think someone was trying to tell a story, but I didn't. I think we didn't get it. Francis, you were trying to tell us a story about your in the chat. Maybe you could just like to elaborate a little bit on that. That would give us more insights, and then maybe it would be a good start for a conversation. Over to you, Francis. If you can tell us a little bit more about what you were trying to tell. Okay, maybe until that. Any other questions that you want to discuss? Okay, maybe from this, I'll ask a very stupid question. Now, we have so much access to AI, right? Now, writing a story has become so easy. So, how do you see? And like, I just give my idea to AI, and AI will write the story for me. Isn't that a shortcut?
Well,
I'm so
it's a
fast with the
very good
question.
story. I think you all can open stretch your ears and listen to this. I have a very different opinion about this. So just giving a history for that. Like few weeks ago, I was in European Parliament participating in a workshop that is dedicated for writing and translations, and where the world's one of the best few of the best translators and interpreters showed us with evidences that AI is not really doing the human job. Instead, it can be used as an assistant. And then a few days later, I was in Brussels at the Belgium's Writers Festival, where we had a theme, AI and the story writing, or creative writing rather, where I heard one of the most convincing speeches I've ever heard, that AI has not still come and probably may not come to the level of human creativity. AI can regenerate things using what they have and it learns. But our diversity is itself a challenge. Every single person thinks differently, and different times imagine if you are not a stupid person, you will contradict yourself at least 3 times a day. Do you think AI can contradict itself 3 times a day? No. I think that is the most important thing. Being human is that you contradict yourself at least 3 times a day. That is being that's one of the most intelligent part of us, because we always, we process our process our information, and we quickly come to realization that what I just said was wrong. It doesn't matter, like probably our ego, shield us telling that, but we realize that. But some people tell that. So our contradiction itself, I think, is our illusion. So AI is far behind. So coming back to that, I think creative writers, at least, for sure, I know that formatted, like, reports and all these things where the grammar needs to be respected, the sentence is this and la la la, those can work. But where we decide where to put the comma, where we decide what to do with the single word paragraph, the sentence, I would not do that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. That is very interesting, and we will observe that. And I'm sure that contradicting ourselves 3 times a day, I don't think AI will achieve that, because that's so perfect already. Yeah, so yes, Kiri, first of all, thanks so much for Kiri. He's not being able to in the main room and ask questions because he's very kindly doing the translation for us in Indonesian. But Kiri has put a very interesting question. How could humanitarian story different from other books?
Very good question. It's a very challenging question for me as well. What is humanitarian story, and what is the other story? I think every story of human being and humankind is humanitarian. We all tell humanitarian stories. And in case if somebody picked your book for a humanitarian cause, yes, of course, it will be seen as a humanitarian story. But even the other authors do write about human kindness, human problems, the things that the people, face on everyday basis. And I really need to highlight this thing. There's a misconception, the largely seen around the world, that you have to be fleeing a major conflict. You have to be in a minority group. You have to be in X, Y, Z, and you have to be a victim of this disaster, that disaster, to become a, like the characters I'm focusing. Okay, the characters. So become kind of like to come to the limelight. No, every single person on this earth facing a crisis, one or the other. The fact is that we don't recognize that we are facing crises until they hit our door. Every single story that involve human are humanitarian stories that we have not, the same way that until the disasters knock our door, we don't realize that until that doesn't happen to us, we don't realize that these are humanitarian stories. I mean, every story about the people we think that ordinary do carry humanitarian stories. Noel, did I respond to you, right?
Yes, yes, you did. You did. That is very, very interesting. So you highlighted that this humanitarian word has a particular connotation, but every story is actually humanitarian story if we are talking about a human being. So thank you so much. Any other questions? Please take this opportunity to ask any questions if you have. Put your hand up or
I have a
you.
question.
Yeah, please
Uh,
go ahead. Shiru.
lot lot of Sri Lankans currently at the moment use their storytelling to build their brand. So their brand is their one day stories. Now we know it's right or wrong, but why Sri Lankans kept doing these kind of things like doing your personal story as a brand, and then you build your career on that, and they suddenly fell off. Suddenly they are gonna fell off from the ladder when it comes to the politicians, or some may come to the actors or some celebrities here in Sri Lanka. So why they are keep promoting their stories as a brand and then fell off from the ladder in the latter part of their careers?
Thank you, Siru. So there are two parts of this. One, the first part is it is self, whether it is true or not. The stories are so powerful that create, that can bring, like that can create an elephant out of an ant. So itself, if you don't have the integrity to what you write, that means you are using the power of stories or power of storytelling to create an elephant out of an ant. And then when it is not written with the utmost integrity to what you write, the ant must somehow come out. That's the second part. So one of the good things that I can really, draw in this question is, thank you so much for this, that whatever you write, I told in a very different way, but I will clarify it. I told you that I always tend to write a story that I would like to read, where the integrity of the story should be the utmost priority and the most precious value I do have it. I don't write to gallery. I don't write to the trends. I write a story that I want to read. That itself says that the more powerful a tool is, it has more impact, but it can be used for good and bad. And then that's why storytelling, when it falls with people who don't have integrity, it can have disastrous impacts for those who do that and for the others.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for uh, getting that clarified. You know, I believe, Pramodit, that there are a lot of people who are already inspired by you, and we are all inspired by those very thick books you write. Like, for a new person or young youth who is interested in writing, how do you make a habit out of writing? Just a very pragmatic question, how do we develop that skill? Can you give these young youths, some guidance and motivation on that, if you don't mind?
So, Nabil, thanks. It's an interesting one. I mean, it's pretty much like I don't know how to respond to that in a conscious way because you can be a stupid writer who would do very good stuff. You can be a conscious writer who can do a lot of stupid things. Why I say that is that sometimes writing can be as toxic as drugs. Because when it becomes your passion, you give up everything and you plunge into that. You don't know how deep the waters are. And you have just forgotten that you cannot swim. That's one way to write. The other way to write, which I would recommend, is that if you have a real passion to write, number one, you should have that. Don't force yourself to write at all. Okay? And everybody has a writer, but he has to or she has to wake up. Wait till that person wakes up. Because everybody gets angry when like put, like you throw cold water on them while they are sleeping. So, the fundamental things for for commencing a writing career is that you need to know that you are human and you cannot be writing all day, every day, and you cannot force yourself to finish a book. Number one, I would show you some. This book is this was my first book. This has around 160,000 words. This is my second book. It has 97,000 words. This is third one. It has around 60,000 words. And my fourth book has around 180,000 words. So, but this 60,000 took around 2 years. This took 1.5 years for 97. This took 2 years. But the one that I'm writing now has taken 8 years. So you don't have that. I mean, if I press myself to finish it in 1 year, I think I would have been in one of those, probably I would have been depressed. You cannot do that. This is creation. So then again, coming back to the world we live in, that should be relatable too. So most of the authors, until they become celebrity authors, may not be able to earn as much to cover your living expenses. So you have to do a day job. And then you do a day job and then you dedicate your spare time for that. That means you are engaging in two jobs. One doesn't pay and the other one pays you. So keep you motivated is very important. That's why I told you at the beginning, it is very important to have your passion. Without the passion is not possible because you are forcing yourself and probably you are losing your ability to create something good. Give it the time, right? When you have aspirations, don't ever push yourself. And then one day, like me, you can drop everything. Beside, you just can leave everything behind and take a pen and sit. That time will come, but for that, you really have to realize the time boundaries, financial constraints, and to write, you have to live a comfortable life, and you have to at least have food in your stomach, and then finally the passion. Did I respond to you right?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. That was a very stupid question from my end, but you answered it very wisely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So I think we are almost spent about 40 minutes. I will take another 1 or 2 minutes if you have any more questions, or we will call this session an end to an end. But thank you so much, Pramudit, for actually we should call him Dr. Pramudit. He is a PhD. I'm sorry I did not introduce yourself like that, but he is, and I think more than all that, he is a doctor of life, many, many walks of life. So thank you so much from Dr. Pramudit for joining us today. And we will take few more minutes if there are any other final comments or else participants and the partners, please be in the room. We will have a quick discussion, not long, but please feel free to ask if you have any more questions. Okay, I think give me 1 second. We will end the session in Indonesia, in Bahasa Indonesia. And Kiri, are you in the main room now?
Yes, Novil,
Great,
I'm
yeah.
here.
Thank
Thank you.
you. So, Kiri, I want you to, do a vote of thanks in Bahasa Indonesia, and somebody from French, from Africa, if they are there. Anybody from speaking French in the room? You can do, Pershi?
French?
Yes,
French?
yes,
No, no. No, I
no,
cannot.
okay,
Maybe.
okay. Kiri, we'll do it in Bahasa Indonesia just to show our gratitude. And he worked in Indonesia and he understands you.
I will translate for English.
No need of translate. You just say thank you. We know what you are telling.
Oke, Dr. Pramudi, terima kasih banyak sudah berbagi, sudah bercerita, cerita, story. Dan Indonesia itu bertumbuh karena cerita. Kita independence, kita merdeka juga karena cerita. Dan terima kasih untuk pelajaran malam hari ini. Terima kasih banyak.
Thank
I
you.
said we are so thankful because of we grow as Indonesian as with stories a lot.
I understand. I lived in Aceh Basar. I lived in Bali. I worked in Indonesia for 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I grow with stories because I was born in Greece. I'm Indonesian. I've been in different places. So thank you.
Terima kasih.
Sama-sama.
Yeah, thank you. Then over to Pesh to do a little bit of thanks from Africa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Novel, for the opportunity. I know I'll just speak in English because we in Africa, we have so many languages, and I'm quite sure if I use my language, maybe
Yeah,
nobody
please
can.
do. Yes.
So I really appreciate our facilitator for today session, and I myself have really learned a lot, and I through the inspiration, I believe all the participants and the partners that have joined will be in position to use, will be in position to know how to use stories to as a tool to transform society, because we believe, like our past stories, though they're bad, can be used to change our society. We can, like the same Tushimani in its Tushimani, yes. So we can use the same stories to change the society. And I really thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for the wisdom all. I've really learned a lot, and just I would like to stop here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Pooja. Over to you.
Yeah.
Say a vote of thanks in Hindi before we go to Sinhalese to represent India. If you don't mind, Pooja.
या थैंक्स नोबल। मेरे सब साथी जो हिंदुस्तान से जुड़े हैं, मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि इस कार्यक्रम से आपको बहुत अच्छा लगा होगा और आपने बहुत कुछ सीखा होगा। और इसी आश्वासन के साथ, इसी आशा के साथ कि आप हमसे जुड़े रहेंगे और आगे भी हमारे साथ चलेंगे, मैं आप लोग को सबको धन्यवाद देती हूँ कि यहाँ आप जुड़े और हमारे साथ रहे। थैंक यू।
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you. And now, last but not least, for Isuru to give a warm thanks in Sinhalese.
බොහොම ස්තුතියි වෛද්‍යනෝවිල්. ඇත්තරම මේක අපිට ගොඩාක් හොඳ අවස්ථාවක් වුණා කතා ස්ටෝරි රීඩින් සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඉතාමත් ගැඹුරු අධ්‍යයනයකට යොමු වෙන්න. ඉතින් අපි ගොඩාක් දේවල් අද ඉගෙන ගත්තා. අපි ගොඩාක් දේවල් හොයාගත්තා කියන්න පුළුවන් මේ කතාවෙන්. අපි ස්ටෝරි يعني කතාන්දර කීමේ ගැන සහ ඒ පැත්තෙන් කොහොමද අපි ඉදිරියට ගමන් කරන්න කියලා. ඉතින් බොහෝමත්ම ස්තුතිවන්ත වෙනවා ප්‍රමුදිත් මහත්මයාට අද අපේ මේ ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් එකට ඇවිල්ලා අපිට මේ සහයෝගය දක්වාට සහ අපේගේ ඉන්දුනීසියානු පිරිස සහ අපගේ අප්‍රිකානු පිරිසට බොහොම ස්තුතියි මේ වැඩ මේ කාර්යය යථාර්ථයක් කරගන්න සහයෝගය දුන්නා. බොහොම ස්තුතියි.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pramidith. So we will really
Welcome.
congratulate you and wish you all the best.